You arrive without fanfare. Not at a landmark with a sign. Not at a place that asks to be noticed. Just a stretch of high desert where the ground has learned how to hold heat without complaint. The road ends in hard-packed dirt. The tire tracks fade. And the wind keeps doing what it has been doing for a long time. Moving. Not hurried. Just steady. The light is clean here. It lays itself across low brush and scattered stone. It finds every edge, every pale thorn, every small shadow tucked under a rock. You feel your own weight more clearly. Boot soles pressing down. A quiet creak in your pack straps. The canteen tapping once against your hip, then settling. There's a simple structure ahead. A small, functional building, more shed than cabin. Sun-bleached plywood. A roof of corrugated metal. A shade cloth pulled tight between posts, making a long rectangle of soft darkness. A water barrel near the door. A broom leaning where it always leans. Nothing decorative. Everything practical. Inside the shade, the air changes. Cools by a few degrees. The wind becomes a softer sound, filtered through fabric. Dust settles in slower spirals. You pause there long enough to notice your breathing. The way it slows when there's no reason to push. In. On the wall beside the door is a weathered board. A few notes pinned under flat stones. Pencil on a string. A small jar of chalk nubs, white and worn. One of the notes is newer than the others. The paper is still stiff. The handwriting is careful. It doesn't announce anything dramatic. It reads like a reminder, a quiet invitation, something beneath. You step closer and let your eyes do their slow work. A mention of a hollow in the basalt, a place the sun doesn't reach, a thin opening that doesn't show itself from a distance. A warning written without fear. Not dangerous, it says, just careful. Mind the edges. Don't touch what doesn't need touching. Leave the place as you find it. Behind you, a door opens with a gentle scrape. Not sudden, not startling, just the sound of a hinge doing its job. Person steps into the shade. A guide in the simple way that some people become guides without trying. Hat, work shirt, a small headlamp in hand, not yet turned on. Their movements are unhurried. Their eyes take you in the way someone checks the sky before a long walk. Calm and thorough. They nod once, not as greeting with ceremony, more like acknowledgement. Yes, they say quietly, as if the shade itself prefers soft voices. You're here for the lower place. The words aren't a question. They feel like something already known. You don't need to explain much. Not with the note on the wall. Not with the chalk jar. Not with the way the desert here seems to hold its secrets close to the ground. You simply stand and listen. The guide's boots shift once in the dust. They glance toward the open land, then back to you. It's not a cave people visit, they say. Not like the ones with railings. They lift the headlamp slightly, then lower it again. It's a passage, a long one, quiet, a pause. And it's easy to miss on the way out if you're not paying attention. They set a coil of thin rope on the bench under the shade cloth. Not heavy climbing rope, just enough. A tool for marking, for remembering, for returning. They add a small cloth bag. The outline suggests something simple inside. Chalk, a few flagging strips, a folded map that doesn't pretend to be perfect. You drink a mouthful of water, not because you're thirsty, because it's steadying, because the body likes small rituals before a change. The water is warm from the barrel, sun-touched, and honest. It tastes like mineral and plastic and something else you can't name. It does its job anyway. The guide points with 2 fingers, not dramatic. Out beyond the shed, across low brush and scattered basalt chunks. toward a slope that looks like every other slope until it doesn't. You won't see it until you're close, they say. And once you're close, you'll wonder how you didn't see it before. You step out of the shade. The sun returns to your shoulders. The wind returns to your ears. The world widens again, and you begin walking not fast, not slow for show, just at the pace that keeps your breathing easy. The ground changes subtly as you go. More rock, less sand, basalt that looks poured and cooled, like the land once moved in liquid patience. Your boots find stable places between stones. You keep your steps gentle. You don't kick anything loose. You don't need to. After a while, the guide slows. They stop where the slope turns slightly inward. They crouch and place a hand on a particular stone, not as a signal, but as recognition. Then they point to something that isn't really a hole yet, just a darker seam, a shadow that doesn't behave like the others, a place where the wind seems to hesitate. Close, it's there, a narrow opening, partially veiled by a fold of rock and a few dry branches that have collected over time. It doesn't look inviting. It doesn't look threatening. It looks like the earth holding a quiet mouth closed until you earn the right to notice it. The guide turns on the headlamp just once to test it. A soft circle of light appears on the stone. Then they turn it off again, letting your eyes keep their desert adaptation. Once you go below, they say, it's a different kind of listening. A small pause. You decide when you're ready. You stand at the seam of shadow. You feel the heat on your back. You feel the cooler breath rising from the opening, faint but real. A temperature change like a hand held near water. And without urgency, without a push from behind, you make your decision. You take the headlamp. You take a piece of chalk. You step toward the dark. And you go below. The first step is more like a lean than a step. A careful shift of weight, a decision made with your feet. You duck your head and angle your shoulders, and the opening accepts you in the quiet way it accepts everything. Without comment, without welcome, just space. The air changes immediately. It loses the sun. It becomes cooler, denser, older. The smell is stone and dust and something faintly metallic, like the inside of a toolbox left unopened for years. Behind you, the desert light stays visible, a pale slice. Ahead, the passage narrows into dimness. You click on the headlamp. The light is modest, a soft circle, not a beam that tries to conquer anything. It shows rock textures close enough to touch. Basalt walls with small bubbles frozen in place. Thin lines where water once moved, slowly, patient as time. Your footsteps sound different here, muted, contained. Each step is a small event, then gone. The guide comes in behind you with the same unhurried care. They don't crowd you. They keep a respectful distance, letting you set the pace. Their voice is low, almost blended into the cave air. Watch your shoulders, they say. Not because it's dangerous, because it's easy to scrape rock without meaning to. You turn slightly sideways. You let the pack shift. You move as if you're carrying something fragile. Not because you are, because the place is. The passage bends. Not sharply, just enough that the slice of desert light behind you becomes thinner. Then thinner. Then it's simply a pale memory around a corner. You pause just once and look back, not with worry, with awareness, with the simple human habit of noting where you came from. The guide takes out the rope. They don't tie it to you. They don't tie it to anything dramatic. They loop it gently around a rough basalt knob near the entry bend, then let it run loose along the floor. It's a line you can follow back with a hand, like tracing a sentence you don't want to forget. Not for fear, they say quietly, for simplicity. You take a piece of chalk and draw a small mark on the wall, a short line, A second short line beneath it. Nothing that looks like graffiti, just a private symbol placed with care. Then you slide the chalk back into the cloth bag, as if returning a borrowed tool. As you go deeper, sound changes again. The wind disappears. The desert's wide hush becomes a tighter hush. You can hear your breath more clearly. You can hear the soft rasp of fabric on rock. You can hear the small click of a boot tread finding purchase. The temperature steadies. Not cold, just cool enough that your skin notices. The kind of cool that makes you feel awake without making you tense. Moisture gathers in places where the rock dips. Tiny beads that catch your lamp light and return it quietly. Not sparkling like jewelry, just present. The path is obvious in a physical way. Not because it's built, because stone has been worn where feet have gone. A gentle slope downward. A natural corridor that invites a slow walk. In some places, the ceiling rises and you can stand fully. In others, you duck again, shoulders rounding, head lowered. You become a careful shape, a quiet, moving thing. There are small side openings, shallow and dark. Your light touches them and then moves on. You don't need to explore everything. You don't need to prove anything. The guide's presence behind you is steady, a quiet reassurance without words. After a long bend, the basalt begins to change. You see pale mineral streaks, thin veins like old handwriting, a chalky white in places, a soft green tint in others. The rock seems less like poured stone now and more like layered patience. You notice something that isn't exactly sound. Not a voice, not a whisper, more like the sensation of being in a room where something else is also present. Not threatening, not curious in a human way, simply aware, as if the cave keeps track of what enters the way a tree keeps track of wind. The guide slows. They raise a hand, not a stop, just a gentling. This is where people start moving too fast, they say softly. They feel the air change and think they should hurry. A small pause. There's no reason to hurry. You take that in. You let your steps become even smaller. You place each foot. You feel the rock under your sole. You become aware of balance not as a challenge but as a simple practice. The rope continues along the floor, loose and faithful. You reach down once and let your fingers find it. It's cool and slightly dusty. You don't pull it. You just confirm it. Yes, it's there. Yes, you can find your way back. The passage drops again and then levels. Your headlamp reveals a change ahead. The corridor opens into a wider chamber, not large like a cathedral, but larger than the tight hallway you've been following. The ceiling lifts. The floor becomes uneven with broken stone, like old steps that were never carved. In the center of this chamber, the path narrows into something more particular. The threshold. Careful place. The guide steps up beside you, still not crowding. They point with their light briefly, then lower it again. There, they say. The tricky part starts there. You follow the gesture, and you see it clearly now. A narrow ledge along the right wall. A drop that isn't huge but is enough to demand respect. A turn that asks for balance and patience and a steady hand. Beyond it, you can see a softer glow in the distance, minerals catching your lamp light in faint, colored hints. Not bright, not loud, just waiting. You stand at the edge of the difficult area. The task is visible now in a simple way. You can see where you need to go. You can see what careful steps will be required. And you don't begin yet. You just breathe. You let the cave's cool air settle into you. And you prepare slowly to make your careful choice. You kneel first, not to dramatize, just to lower your center of gravity, to let your hands become part of your movement. The ledge begins at ankle height, then rises slightly as it follows the wall. It isn't razor thin, but it isn't generous either. a place made for slow feet and calm attention. The guide stays behind you. They don't instruct every step. They don't fill the air with warnings. They simply set down the cloth bag and open it. A few more chalk nubs, a strip of soft fabric, a small pouch that might hold a sample vial, nothing more. Take what you need, they say. Leave the rest. Your task here is modest, not treasure, not conquest, a quiet collection, a small sample of mineral water that pools beyond the ledge, used for simple testing, a note in a field book, a confirmation that the lower chamber is still stable, still breathing, still itself, the kind of work that helps people understand without taking. You touch the rope line again, then let it be. This part is not about the rope. This part is about your body and the stone. You place your right foot on the ledge, then your left. You stand slowly. You feel the wall with your left hand, not gripping hard, just contact, just a steady reference. Your headlamp paints the rock in a gentle circle. You see fine dust. You see small crystals embedded in basalt like seeds in bread. You see a pale, delicate formation farther ahead, thin mineral drips that look like frozen rain. You keep your light low and soft. You do not aim it directly at every fragile thing. You don't need to. Step, pause, step, pause. Each movement is a decision, but not a stressful one. A calm series of small, practical choices. Your breathing stays even. Your shoulders stay low. You keep your hips close to the wall. You let your feet find the ledge without forcing them. Halfway along, the ledge narrows slightly. Not enough to stop you. Enough to ask you to slow. You do. You take a longer pause. You let your hands slide along the wall, feeling the texture. Basalt roughness under your fingertips. A thin mineral vein smooth as bone. A cool patch where moisture lingers. This is where the cave feels most aware. Not as a presence standing in front of you. Not as a face. Not as a creature. Just an attention in the air. A quiet noticing. As if the chamber is listening to how you move. Whether you are careful. Whether you are restrained. Whether you understand that you are a visitor. You reach a place where you could, if you wanted, step off the ledge onto a lower shelf and reach a pocket of crystal. Your lamp catches it. A cluster with colors you almost don't believe at first. Deep red like iron-rich glass. Blue-green like distant water. Milky white with a softness that looks like moonlight trapped in stone. The clarity is startling. The beauty is simple and exact. You could take more than you should. You could fill your pockets. You could break off a piece and tell yourself it wouldn't matter. It would be easy. It would be quick. And it would be wrong. You stay still. Not frozen. Just quiet. You let the sight be enough. You let the place keep what it has kept. You feel the difference between wanting and taking. And you choose restraint with a calm that doesn't need applause. You move on. Step. Pause. Step. The ledge carries you toward the far side of the chamber. There, the passage widens again. Your shoulders relax. Your feet find broader rock. And you step off the ledge and into the lower space without any sudden release of tension. Just a gentle continuation. The floor here is smoother, worn by time and occasional careful feet. A shallow pool sits in a stone basin, no wider than a serving tray. The water is still. It reflects your lamp in a soft oval. You crouch beside it and take out the small vial. You rinse it once with pool water, then fill it halfway. Not full. Halfway is enough. Halfway is respectful. You cap it slowly. You wipe the outside with the strip of fabric. You place it in the pouch. Then you sit back on your heels for a moment and listen. The cave's quiet is not empty. It is full of small sounds you don't hear above ground. A faint drip somewhere far away. A tiny shift of air through cracks you can't see. your own breath moving in and out like a tide. Your lamp shows the mineral walls more clearly now. Not just basalt, not just stone, but layers of time, inclusions, veins, a geography that doesn't need to be translated into words. It is enough to be here and see it, enough to be here and leave it unchanged. The guide joins you at a respectful distance. They glance at the vial, then at your hands. No speech about success, no congratulations, just a small nod, as if to say, that was the right amount. You take one last look at the crystal pocket you chose not to touch. The colors remain where they belong. The chamber remains patient, and you feel not rewarded but accepted, not in a mystical way, in a practical, quiet way, as if careful behavior is simply noticed and allowed. You stand. You turn back toward the ledge. You don't rush. You return the same way you came, with the same steady pace. Hand to wall, foot to ledge, pause between steps. Your light stays gentle. Your breathing stays even. When you reach the wider chamber again, you step off the narrow path and onto stable ground. You feel the rope under your fingers. You follow it without pulling. You trace your way back as if following a familiar sentence. The sense of awareness softens behind you. Not gone, just quieter, as if the cave has returned to its own thoughts. And as you begin the slow walk upward, you feel the simple peace of having taken less than you could, and having left more than you came for. The ascent changes the air in small stages. First, you notice the temperature warming. Not suddenly, just 1 degree at a time, then another. The stone underfoot becomes drier. The damp smell thins. The silence loosens its grip, and the idea of wind becomes possible again. You keep the headlamp on, but you don't rely on it as much now. Your eyes recognize the bends. Your chalk marks appear like gentle reassurance. 2 short lines, then another pair. The rope continues along the floor, faithful and cool beneath your fingertips. You don't need to test it. You simply follow it, steady as breath. The guide moves beside you for a while, then behind you again. They let you have the front, the pace, the rhythm. There is no lecture, no summary of what you did. Just the quiet companionship of someone who understands that a place like this is better honored with less talk. At the last bend, the desert light returns. Pale slice at first, then wider, then wide enough to cast a soft glow on the cave wall. You turn off the headlamp, not because you must, because the natural light feels appropriate, because it's gentle, because it's enough. You duck once more through the narrow opening, and the world opens. Heat touches your shoulders again. Wind touches your ears again. The scent of sun-warmed brush returns, dry and familiar. You blink slowly, letting your eyes adjust without rushing them. The sky is still wide, but the light has softened. Not by much, just enough that shadows are longer, edges less sharp. The day moving toward evening with quiet certainty. You walk back across the basalt slope, not triumphant, not tired in a heavy way, just steady. Your pack feels the same. Your canteen taps your hip once, then settles. The vial in its pouch is small, light, unimportant in weight, important only in purpose. At the shed, the shade cloth waits like a calm hand held out. You step into it and feel the cooler air wrap around you. The water barrel stands where it stood before. The broom leans where it always leans. The world above ground is unchanged, and that feels right. The guide sets the coil of rope back on the bench. They take the chalk bag and close it, a small, practical ritual of putting things away. Then they look at you with the same calm expression. Minimal dialogue, just 2 words spoken softly. Good pace. You drink another mouthful of water. This time it tastes cooler, Or maybe it's just that your body has slowed enough to notice. You sit for a moment under the shade cloth. You let your breathing return to the rhythm it had when you arrived. In. You don't explain what you saw. You don't need to. The crystal pocket remains below, unchanged and patient. The pool remains still. The air remains cool in the depths. And whatever awareness the place holds remains what it is. Quiet, neutral, unbothered. When you stand again, you step out of the shade and into the open. The road is still hard-packed dirt. The wind is still steady. The desert is still not trying to impress you. It simply is. White, clean, patient. You arrive without fanfare. Not at a landmark with a sign. Not at a place that asks to be noticed. Just a stretch of high desert where the ground has learned how to hold heat without complaint. The light lies across low brush and scattered stone. Your boots press into dust that settles like flour. Your canteen taps gently against your hip, then grows still. And the wind keeps doing what it has been doing for a long time. Moving, not hurried, just steady.